First question: why is it important to use valuable sources to understand the past? First, you have to take into account the type of sources, such as primary sources like letters, diaries, artifacts, stuff like that, to provide first-hand perspectives of the events that happened during that time. While secondary sources like books written after the fact or analyses by scientists way after the events happened help to interpret it and contextualize events after the things happen. So they are using both gives a fuller picture than just using one. So, but then every source is created for a reason, whether to inform or record or entertain. Understanding the purpose of each one helps us detect bias and intent. Reliability. So some sources may be more accurate than others depending on who created them and why. So cross-checking your sources and comparing lots of different ones can help you get way more accurate with your research and avoid relying on a single perspective. Without careful evaluation, you risk misunderstanding events or to use biased views or missing voices that were silenced in history. Second question: what are some limitations and how could you address them? First limitation that is very common with second type of sources is bias or perspective. So what can happen is that an author can influence their own source by writing their opinions into it, that it may be reflected by the text that has been written. So to address it, you can compare other sources or cross-reference information. Then some sources can also be incomplete or have some missing information. So it could be that you could address it by filling gaps, again with multiple types of references or different types of writers or sites where you can check this information. So you can check gaps in history and you can fill them in to have the full picture. And then another limitation could be context. So let's say some sources could be misinterpreting certain events if a lot of context isn't taken into place. So modern values can also be imposed on the past to make some of these sources be more misinterpreted. So you can address it by researching cultural or political context of the time. Third question: what did I learn about my identity and your classmates' identities through this activity? So first, I learned that personal identity, is shaped through the experiences or in the history, family, and culture of that specific person. So all the events that have happened during their life will shape them into the person they are now. Even though every person will have a different experience, they will all also have similar experiences and yet be totally different from one another, because each interaction they had and each moment they have or they remember will make them a different person. So by sharing and comparing, you may see how, for example, Alan, which was my partner, you can see how their backgrounds differ yet also overlap with mine. Then it shows that also our identity is not just individual, is like shown and connected to larger, like a community or a environment, and a person's environment will also influence their identity. And fourth question: how do elements of the past contribute to recognizing your identity? So your family, your stories, your traditions, or cultural practices connect you to your roots and your culture as a person, but also the history, like historical events, like wars or migration or social movements, influence the perspectives you have now. Because if these events didn't happen in the past, it wouldn't be the same perspective you have now than you would have had in that past. And understanding the past helps you recognize why you see the world the way you do and how your identity fits into broader human history.